man who preferred the company of nature over people. His name was Jack, and he had good reasons for choosing this isolated life. Jack was 45 years old with a thick beard that had more gray in it than he cared to admit. His hands were rough and calloused from chopping wood and building things. He had served in the military for 20 years before tragedy struck his life like lightning from a clear sky. A car accident had taken his wife and young daughter from him, leaving him with a hole in his heart that nothing could fill. So he came here, to this mountain, hoping the silence would somehow ease his pain. Every morning, Jack followed the same routine. He would wake up at dawn, make strong coffee, and bake fresh bread in his old wood-fired oven. The smell of that bread was one of the few things that still brought him joy. He would place the loaves on the porch to cool while he went about his morning chores, feeding the chickens and checking his vegetable garden. But on this particular November morning, something was different. When Jack came back to collect his bread, one loaf was missing. He stood there staring at the empty spot on the cooling rack, his brow furrowed in confusion. At first he thought maybe he had miscounted. But no, he always baked 3 loaves on Tuesdays. Now there were only 2. The next morning, it happened again. This time Jack was certain. Someone or something was stealing his bread. Living this far up the mountain, it could have been a bear preparing for winter, or maybe a clever raccoon. He had seen both around his property before, but something about this felt different. The bread was taken carefully, not torn apart like an animal would do. Jack decided to stay up and watch. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, he positioned himself by the window with a clear view of the porch. The temperature dropped quickly after dark, and frost began to form on the cabin windows. He wrapped himself in a thick blanket and waited, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Hours passed. The moon rose high, casting silver light across the forest. Jack was starting to think that maybe the thief wouldn't come tonight when he saw movement near the tree line. His body tensed as he watched a small figure emerge from the shadows, moving carefully toward his porch. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a raccoon. It was a child. Jack's heart skipped a beat. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stepped into the moonlight. She was painfully thin. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she wasn't wearing a proper coat despite the freezing temperature. Her hair was tangled and hung around her face in messy strands. She moved like a frightened deer, ready to run at the slightest sound. The girl reached the porch and looked around nervously before her small hands reached for the bread. They were shaking, whether from cold or fear, Jack couldn't tell. Probably both. She grabbed the loaf and held it against her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. That's when Jack made his move. He opened the cabin door and the old hinges creaked loudly in the quiet night. The girl's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror as they met his. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Jack could see the fear in those eyes, but also something else, something that broke his heart into pieces. Desperation. Pure, raw desperation. He raised his hands slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. But before he could say a word, the girl turned and ran. She clutched the bread tightly and disappeared into the dark forest like a ghost, leaving Jack standing on his porch in the freezing night air, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. Who was this child? Why was she out here alone in the mountains? Where were her parents? And most importantly, how long had she been surviving out here in the cold, stealing bread to stay alive? Jack went back inside, but he knew he wouldn't sleep that night. He sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames, thinking about what he had seen. That little girl's face was now burned into his memory. The fear in her eyes reminded him of wounded animals he had seen during his time in the military. Creatures that had been hurt so badly they didn't trust anyone anymore. As the first light of dawn began to creep across the sky, Jack made a decision. He couldn't ignore this. He couldn't pretend he hadn't seen her. That child needed help whether she knew it or not, and despite spending 5 years trying to shut out the world and everyone in it, Jack found that he still had enough humanity left in him to care. He spent the morning preparing. He baked extra bread and gathered some warm clothes that might fit a small child. He had kept some of his daughter's old things in a trunk, unable to throw them away even after all these years. Now perhaps they would serve a purpose again. Jack knew the girl would be hungry. She would come back. And when she did, he would be ready. Not to catch her like some criminal, but to help her. To save her from whatever nightmare had driven her to live alone in these cold mountains. stealing bread to survive. The mountain had been his refuge from pain, but now it seemed fate had brought someone else here, someone who needed refuge even more than he did. Jack looked out at the vast forest surrounding his cabin and wondered what story this little girl carried with her. Whatever it was, he had a feeling it was going to change both of their lives forever. As he placed fresh bread on the porch that evening, Jack whispered a quiet prayer to whatever force might be listening. He prayed that the girl would come back, that she would give him a chance to help her, and that somehow he would find the right words to make her understand that not all adults were dangerous, that not all homes were filled with pain. The sun set once again, and Jack settled in to wait, his heart heavy with concern for a child he didn't even know, a child whose silent cry for help had reached across the darkness and touched something deep inside him that he thought had died 5 years ago. He left the cabin door slightly open and placed not just bread on the porch, but also a warm blanket, a bottle of water, and some fruit. Then he stepped back inside and watched through the crack in the door, holding his breath as the small figure emerged from the forest once more. The girl approached more cautiously this time, her eyes darting toward the cabin windows, checking for any sign of danger. When she saw the items laid out, she froze, confusion crossing her young face. Jack could see her better tonight. She had bright, intelligent eyes despite the exhaustion written all over her features. Her cheeks were hollow from hunger, and her lips were cracked and dry. She couldn't have weighed more than 50 pounds, far too light for a child her age. The sight made Jack's chest tighten with anger at whoever had allowed this to happen. The girl looked at the blanket for a long moment, then quickly grabbed everything, stuffing the food into her ragged jacket pockets before wrapping the blanket around her thin shoulders. She turned to run, but Jack made his move. He stepped out onto the porch, speaking as gently as he could. "Wait, please. I won't hurt you." The girl spun around, terror flooding her face. She stumbled backward, almost falling off the porch steps. But she didn't run, not yet. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe something in Jack's voice made her pause. They stood there in the cold night air, watching each other like two wild animals, unsure whether to fight or flee. "I know you're hungry," Jack continued, keeping his voice soft and steady. "I know you're cold. I can help you, but you have to trust me just a little bit." "You're lying," the girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Adults always lie." Those words hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. What had this child been through to make her say something like that? He took a small step forward, and the girl took 2 steps back. "I'm not lying," he said. "Look around you. Do you see anyone else? I live here alone. I'm not going to call anyone or tell anyone you're here. I just want to make sure you're okay." The girl's eyes filled with tears, though she tried to blink them away. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her words. "No, you're not," Jack said gently. "And that's okay. Whatever happened to you, whatever you're running from, you don't have to tell me right now, but you can't keep living in the woods like this. It's too cold. Winter is coming, and you won't survive out here much longer." For a moment, the girl seemed to consider his words. Then her thin body began to sway. Jack saw it happening in slow motion. Her eyes rolled back, her knees buckled, and she collapsed right there on the porch steps. He rushed forward and caught her just before her head hit the wooden boards. She was burning up with fever. Jack could feel the heat radiating from her small body even through her dirty clothes. He lifted her carefully, shocked at how light she was, and carried her inside the cabin. He laid her on his bed and covered her with every blanket he owned. For the next hour, Jack worked frantically. He heated water on the stove, prepared cool cloths for her forehead, and tried to get her to drink small sips of water whenever she stirred. The girl drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling words he couldn't quite understand. As dawn approached, her fever finally began to break. She opened her eyes fully and looked around in panic, trying to sit up. Jack, who had been dozing in a chair beside the bed, immediately held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Easy, easy. You're safe. You collapsed on my porch. You have a fever." The girl's eyes darted around the cabin, taking in her surroundings. She looked at Jack with such deep suspicion that it made his heart ache. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "My cabin. About 5 miles up the mountain from the nearest town. You've been stealing my bread for the past few days, remember?" Something flickered in the girl's eyes. Shame, maybe, or embarrassment. She looked down at the blankets covering her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was just so hungry." "Don't apologize," Jack said firmly. You did what you had to do to survive. But now I need you to tell me your name and what happened to you. Can you do that?" The girl was quiet for a long time. Jack waited patiently, not pushing her. Finally she spoke, her voice so soft he had to lean in to hear her. "My name is Lily. I'm 8 years old. My mama died 2 months ago from being sick. She couldn't breathe right anymore and we didn't have money for the hospital." Jack felt his throat tighten. "I'm sorry about your mother. What about your father?" Lily's face darkened and real fear entered her eyes. "He's not my real dad. He's my stepdad, Frank. He married Mama 3 years ago and at first he seemed nice. But then he started drinking all the time and getting mean." "Real mean? Did he hurt you?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Lily pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "He hurt Mama too when she tried to protect me. Before she died, she told me that if anything happened to her, I should run away. She made me promise. So when Frank came home drunk 3 weeks ago and started yelling about how I was just another mouth to feed and he wished I was gone, I remembered what Mama said. I waited until he passed out and then I ran. Where have you been living? There's an old hunting shelter about 2 miles from here. It doesn't have a door anymore, but it keeps some of the wind out. I found it by accident when I was running through the forest. I've been eating berries and drinking from the stream, but the berries are gone now and the stream is starting to freeze. That's when I saw your cabin and smelled the bread." Jack felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. What kind of monster would drive a child into the wilderness? And where were the people who were supposed to protect kids like Lily? Did anyone try to help you before? Teachers, neighbors, anyone? Lily nodded slowly. A teacher called the child services people once. They came to our house, but Frank was real nice to them. He smiled and lied and said everything was fine. They believed him. After they left, Frank got really angry at me for telling my teacher anything. That's when he started locking me in the closet when I did something wrong. Jack had to close his eyes for a moment to control his emotions. He wanted to find this Frank and show him what it felt like to be hurt by someone bigger and stronger. But that wouldn't help Lily now. She needed something else. She needed safety, food, and someone to believe her story. "Listen to me, Lily," Jack said, looking directly into her eyes. "I believe you. Everything you just told me, I believe it. And I promise you I won't let anyone hurt you again." "You can't promise that," Lily said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "He'll find me. He always said if I ever ran away, he would find me and make me sorry. And he knows people in town, even some police. They drink together. They'll make me go back." Jack saw the terror in her eyes and made a decision that he knew would change everything. He couldn't send this child back into danger. He couldn't trust a system that had already failed her once. He would protect her himself, whatever it took. "You're not going back," he said with quiet determination. "Not now, not ever. We'll figure this out together. But first you need to eat something and get stronger. Can you do that for me?" Lily studied his face for a long moment as if trying to determine whether he was telling the truth. Finally, she gave a small nod. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, Jack thought, a beginning is all you need to change someone's life. The food he prepared but always stayed near the door, ready to run at any moment. She slept in short bursts and Jack would often hear her crying softly at night, trying to muffle the sound so he wouldn't hear. Jack understood. Trust wasn't something you could demand or expect, especially from a child who had been hurt so badly. So he gave her space and time, showing her through small actions that he meant what he said. He cooked her favorite foods when she mentioned them. He found an old radio and let her pick the music stations. He never raised his voice, never moved too quickly, and always told her what he was going to do before he did it. On the third morning, Lily came out of the small guest room where she had been sleeping and found Jack making pancakes. She stood in the doorway watching him work at the stove. "Can I help?" she asked quietly. Jack felt his heart lift. It was the first time she had volunteered to do anything. "Of course. Come here, and I'll show you how to flip them without making a mess." They worked side by side in comfortable silence. Lily was careful and focused, determined to do everything right. When she successfully flipped her first pancake without dropping it, a genuine smile spread across her face. It was the first time Jack had seen her smile, and it transformed her entire appearance. For just a moment, she looked like what she was supposed to be, a happy, normal child. "You're a natural," Jack said, returning her smile. "Maybe tomorrow you can teach me something." I don't know much, Lily said, her smile fading a bit. Frank always said I was stupid and couldn't do anything right. Frank was wrong, Jack said firmly. You survived 3 weeks alone in the wilderness. That takes intelligence, courage, and strength. Most adults couldn't do that. Lily looked up at him with surprise in her eyes, as if no one had ever said anything positive about her before. Really? Really? You're one of the toughest people I've ever met. Over the following days, Lily slowly began to open up more. She told Jack about her mother, a kind woman who had loved books and always read to Lily before bed. She talked about her real father, who had died in a work accident when Lily was just 4 years old. She described her life before Frank came along, when things were hard but happy. Jack shared his own story too. He told Lily about his time in the military, about his wife who loved to paint, and about his daughter who had been obsessed with collecting rocks from everywhere they went. He showed Lily old photographs, and for the first time in 5 years, talking about his family didn't feel like knives in his chest. It felt like honoring their memory by sharing it with someone who needed to know that good people existed in the world. One afternoon, while they were chopping wood together, Lily suddenly asked, "Why did you come live up here all alone?" Jack paused, the axe heavy in his hands. He had been expecting this question eventually. After my family died, the world felt too loud and too painful. I thought if I came here, the quiet would help me heal. It did in some ways, but it also made me lonely. Do you still miss them? Lily asked. Every single day, Jack admitted. But I've learned that missing someone doesn't mean you can't still live your life. It just means they were important to you. The pain is proof of how much you loved them. Lily thought about this for a while. I miss my mama so much it hurts. I know you do. And that's okay. You're allowed to be sad. Frank said I needed to stop crying and get over it. He said Mama was gone and crying wouldn't bring her back. Jack felt that familiar anger toward Frank rising again. He took a deep breath before speaking. Your stepdad was wrong about a lot of things. Grief is not something you get over like a cold. It's something you learn to carry with you, and there's no time limit on it. As the days turned into a week, Jack noticed changes in Lily. She was eating better and had gained a bit of weight. The dark circles under her eyes were fading. She laughed more often, especially when Jack taught her how to feed the chickens and collect eggs. She even started helping him with his daily chores, finding joy in the simple routine of mountain life. But Jack also noticed the shadows that would sometimes cross her face, usually when the sun started to set. That's when the fear would return to her eyes and she would become quiet and jumpy again. He realized she was afraid of the dark now, afraid that Frank would somehow find her even up here. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace after dinner, Lily finally voiced what had been worrying her. Jack, what happens when the food runs out? Or when winter really comes? We can't stay up here forever, can we? Jack had been wrestling with this same question. He knew they couldn't hide forever. Eventually, he would need to go to town for supplies. Eventually, someone would ask questions, and there was the matter of Frank. A man like that wouldn't just let Lily disappear without looking for her, especially if he had something to hide. I've been thinking about that, Jack said carefully. Before we do anything, I need to know more about Frank, about who his friends are and what kind of person he really is. If we're going to keep you safe, I need to understand what we're dealing with. Lily's face went pale. You're going to send me back? No, Jack said quickly, moving to kneel in front of her so they were at eye level. I'm never sending you back. But we need to be smart about this. If Frank is as connected as you say, we can't just walk into the police station and expect them to help us. We need evidence. We need proof of what he did to you. I have proof, Lily said quietly. She pulled up her shirt sleeves, revealing old bruises in various stages of healing, some yellow and fading, others still dark purple. Then she lifted the hem of her shirt, showing more bruises across her ribs and back. He did this. All of it. Jack felt sick looking at the evidence of such cruelty. His hands clenched into fists and he had to remind himself to breathe. Lily, I need you to let me take photos of these. I know it's uncomfortable, but we need documentation. Can you be brave for me one more time? Lily nodded, though tears were streaming down her face. Okay. That night, after documenting everything, Jack sat up late making plans. He had contacts from his military days, people who knew how to navigate complicated situations. He also had skills of his own that he hadn't used in years. Investigation, surveillance, evidence gathering. He had been trained in all of it. But more than that, he had motivation. This little girl who had stumbled into his isolated life by stealing bread had awakened something in him that he thought was dead. The need to protect, the need to fight for something bigger than his own pain, the need to be someone's hero, even if it meant putting himself at risk. As Jack watched Lily sleep peacefully for the first time since she had arrived, her small body finally relaxed and safe under warm blankets, he made a silent promise. He would do whatever it took to protect her. He would face down Frank, corrupt police officers, and anyone else who stood in the way of keeping this child safe. The mountain had been his hiding place, but now it was Lily's sanctuary. And Jack was going to make sure it stayed that way, even if he had to fight the whole world to do it. The broken man who had retreated from life 5 years ago was finding a reason to live again. And that reason was sleeping soundly in the next room, trusting him to keep the darkness at bay. Tomorrow he would start making calls. He would begin investigating Frank and building a case. But tonight he would stand guard over a little girl who had already been through too much, making sure that for once in her young life, she could sleep without fear of the monsters that lurked in the darkness. Because some monsters were real and they wore human faces, but so did heroes, and Jack was determined to be one for Lily no matter what it cost him. But after 2 weeks, he noticed real changes in her. She was laughing more, eating better, and most importantly, she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder anymore. That's when he knew it was time to start gathering information. His first call was to an old military friend named Tom, who now worked as a private investigator in the city. Jack explained the situation carefully, leaving out specific details about Lily's location. Tom agreed to do some digging on Frank without asking too many questions. That's what Jack appreciated about military buddies. They understood that sometimes you needed help without explanations. While waiting for Tom's information, Jack made a trip to the town at the base of the mountain. He told Lily he was just getting supplies, which was partly true. He needed groceries and other essentials. But he also needed to see what people were saying about a missing 8-year-old girl. The town was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Jack stopped at the general store first, making casual conversation with the owner while he shopped. He didn't have to bring up Lily. The store owner did it for him. "Terrible thing about little Lily Parker going missing," the man said while ringing up Jack's items. "Her stepdad Frank has been searching everywhere for her. Poor man looks devastated." Jack kept his expression neutral. "When did she go missing?" "About 3 weeks ago. Frank says she ran away after they had an argument. Police have been looking, but no sign of her yet. Some folks think she might have gotten lost in the woods or worse." "What do you think?" Jack asked carefully. The store owner leaned in, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, I never liked Frank much. He's got a temper, especially when he's been drinking. But he's buddies with Deputy Roy, so nobody says anything. Still, I hope that little girl is safe somewhere, wherever she is." Jack nodded and paid for his supplies. As he was leaving, he noticed a missing child poster on the community board. There was Lily's face smiling in what must have been a school photo. The poster listed Frank as the contact person and offered a reward for information leading to her safe return. Jack felt anger rising in his chest. Frank was playing the concerned parent when Jack knew the truth. The man was probably relieved Lily was gone or wanted her back only to keep his secret safe. His next stop was the library, where he used the public computer to research Frank more thoroughly. What he found was disturbing. Frank had been arrested twice for assault years ago, but the charges had been dropped both times. He had multiple complaints filed against him for domestic disturbances, but again, nothing had ever stuck. It was clear that Frank had connections that protected him. Jack also discovered that Lily's mother had filed for a restraining order just a week before her death. The order claimed that Frank had threatened both her and Lily, and she feared for their safety. But the restraining order had been withdrawn 3 days later. Jack suspected Frank had forced her to drop it. When he returned to the cabin, Lily was waiting anxiously by the window. She ran to him as soon as he came through the door. "You came back," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Of course I came back," Jack said, putting down the supplies. "I promised I wouldn't leave you, didn't I?" "But what if Frank saw you? What if he followed you here?" "He didn't. I was very careful. Besides, I have news." Jack told Lily what he had learned, carefully editing out the most disturbing details. He showed her the missing poster. and she stared at her own photo with sad eyes. "He doesn't want me back because he cares," Lily said quietly. "He wants me back because I know things." "Bad things? What kind of things?" Jack asked gently. Lily was quiet for a long moment, struggling with whether to trust him with this information. Finally, she spoke. "Frank has poker games at our house every week. But they're not normal poker games. He and his friends bet lots of money, more money than I've ever seen. And sometimes they talk about other stuff when they think I'm not listening. Stuff about fixing things, about making problems go away. One time I heard them talking about making evidence disappear from the police station." Jack felt his blood run cold. This was worse than he thought. Frank wasn't just an abuser. He was involved in illegal activities, and he had corrupt police officers helping him cover it up. No wonder the system had failed Lily. The system itself was corrupted. "Did Frank ever know that you heard these things?" Jack asked. "I don't think so. I was always really quiet. But a few days before I ran away, he caught me listening at the top of the stairs during one of his games. He didn't say anything that night, but the next day he told me that little girls who knew too much sometimes had accidents. That's when I got really scared. Everything was starting to make sense now. Frank hadn't just been abusing Lily physically. She was a witness to his criminal activities and a threat to his operations. If she talked to the right person, she could bring down not just Frank, but his whole network of corrupt friends." That evening, Tom called Jack back with more information. What he had discovered was even more disturbing. Frank's poker games were connected to a larger illegal gambling operation that spanned multiple counties. Deputy Roy and at least 2 other law enforcement officers were involved. They had been under investigation by federal authorities for months, but nothing had been proven yet. Tom warned Jack to be very careful. These were dangerous people with a lot to lose. Jack made a decision then. He couldn't go to the local police. He couldn't even go to the state authorities without knowing who was clean and who was dirty. He needed to reach higher, to people who weren't part of Frank's network. But that would take time, and in the meantime, he had to keep Lily safe and hidden. Over the next week, Jack taught Lily some basic survival skills, things she would need to know just in case something happened and they got separated. He showed her how to start a fire without matches, how to find clean water, and how to navigate using the sun and stars. He also taught her what to do in an emergency, including how to reach his friend Tom if she couldn't reach Jack himself. Lily took to the lessons with surprising enthusiasm. She was smart and quick to learn, and Jack realized that teaching her these skills gave her a sense of control over her life that she had never had before. She was no longer just a victim. She was learning to be a survivor. One afternoon, while they were practicing fire-starting techniques, Lily asked Jack something that caught him off guard. "If something happens to you, would I have to go to a foster home?" Jack paused, considering his answer carefully. "Probably. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure nothing happens to me. And if it does, I'll make sure you go somewhere safe, not back to Frank." "But what if I don't want to go anywhere?" Lily said, her voice small. "What if I want to stay with you?" Jack felt his heart clench. He had been trying not to think about the long-term implications of their situation. He was harboring a runaway child, keeping her hidden from authorities. Technically, what he was doing could be considered kidnapping, even though his intentions were good. But looking at Lily's hopeful face, he couldn't bring himself to dash her hopes. "Let's take this one day at a time," he said gently. "Right now, we focus on keeping you safe and building a case against Frank. Once we do that, we'll figure out what comes next." But privately, Jack was already thinking about the possibility. Could he become Lily's guardian? Could he give her the home and family she deserved? The idea both terrified and excited him. He had spent 5 years running from family and connection, afraid of the pain that came with loving someone. But Lily was making him realize that the pain of loneliness was worse than the risk of loss. That night, as Jack tucked Lily into bed, she grabbed his hand before he could leave. "Jack, thank you for believing me. Thank you for not sending me back. You're the only person who's ever really protected me." "You don't have to thank me," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're a good kid, Lily. You deserve to be safe and happy. I'm just sorry it took so long for someone to see that." As he left her room, Jack made another silent promise. He wasn't just going to keep Lily safe temporarily. He was going to fight to keep her permanently. She needed a home, and whether he had planned for it or not, he needed her too. She had brought light back into his dark world, had given him a purpose beyond just surviving each day. The mountain man and the little girl who stole his bread had both been running from their pain, both searching for safety in isolation. But they had found each other, and in doing so, they had found something neither of them expected. They had found family. Now they just had to fight to keep it. 3 weeks had passed since Lily came into Jack's life, and things had settled into a comfortable routine. But Jack knew this peace was temporary. He spent his nights researching, making phone calls to old contacts, and building a detailed case against Frank. What he discovered made him realize they were dealing with something much bigger than one abusive stepfather. Tom had continued his investigation and uncovered a network of corruption that reached deeper than anyone suspected. The illegal gambling operation Frank ran was just one piece. There was money laundering, evidence tampering, and even connections to drug trafficking. Frank wasn't just a small-town criminal. He was a key player in a regional operation, and Deputy Roy was his inside man in law enforcement. But Tom also brought good news. The federal authorities were close to making their move. An FBI task force had been quietly building a case for months. They needed witnesses, evidence, anything that could help them bring down the entire network. Tom suggested that Jack reach out to them, that Lily's testimony could be the missing piece they needed. Jack was torn. On one hand, cooperating with the FBI could protect Lily and put Frank away for good. On the other hand, it meant putting Lily in danger, making her a target for dangerous people. He struggled with this decision for days, losing sleep as he weighed the options. Then something happened that made the decision for him. It was a cold morning when Jack went to town again for supplies. He had been careful, changing his routine each time, taking different routes, making sure he wasn't followed. But this time, as he was leaving the general store, he saw Frank. The man was standing outside the sheriff's office, talking with Deputy Roy and another officer. Jack quickly ducked back into the store, watching through the window. Frank looked exactly as Lily had described him. He was a big man with cold eyes and rough hands. He was smiling as he talked with the officers, but there was something cruel about that smile. Jack watched as Frank showed them something on his phone, and all three men laughed. It made Jack's stomach turn to think that these were the people who were supposed to protect children like Lily. Jack waited until they left before heading back to his truck. But as he drove away from town, he noticed a police car following him at a distance. His heart started racing. Had they somehow connected him to Lily? Did they know where she was? Jack took a longer route home, winding through back roads and making several unnecessary turns. The police car eventually turned off, but the damage was done. They were looking for Lily more actively now, and Jack had probably just made himself a person of interest by acting suspiciously. When he got back to the cabin, Lily immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? Jack told her about seeing Frank and being followed. He watched as the color drained from her face as fear replaced the peace she had finally found. "He's going to find me," Lily whispered, her whole body starting to shake. "He's going to take me back and hurt me." "No, he's not," Jack said firmly, kneeling down to her level. "But we can't wait anymore. We need to contact the FBI now, today. What if they don't believe me? What if they're friends with Frank, too? The FBI is different. They're not local police. They're investigating Frank and his friends. You're exactly the witness they need." Lily was terrified, but she trusted Jack. That afternoon, Jack called Tom and asked him to arrange a meeting with the FBI agents handling the case. Tom said he would make it happen within 24 hours. That night was one of the longest of Jack's life. He barely slept, constantly checking the windows, listening for any unusual sounds. He had his hunting rifle nearby, ready to defend them if Frank somehow found the cabin. Lily couldn't sleep either. Jack could hear her crying in her room, and eventually he went to sit with her. "I'm scared," Lily admitted, her small hand gripping Jack's tightly. "I know. I'm scared too," Jack said honestly. "But being scared doesn't mean we can't be brave. Bravery is doing what's right even when you're terrified." "What if they take me away from you?" Lily asked, voicing the fear that Jack had been trying not to think about. "Then I'll fight to get you back. I promise you, Lily, no matter what happens with the FBI or anyone else, I'm not giving up on you. You're stuck with me now." Lily managed a small smile through her tears. "Good, because you're stuck with me, too." The next morning, Tom called with news. 2 FBI agents wanted to meet with them, but they had to come to a secure location. Tom had arranged for them to use a safe house about 50 miles away. Jack and Lily would need to leave immediately. Jack packed quickly, taking only essential items and all the evidence he had gathered. He helped Lily pack her few belongings, including the photos of her mother that she treasured. As they prepared to leave, Lily took one last look at the cabin. "Will we come back here?" she asked. "I hope so," Jack said. "This is home now." The drive to the safe house was tense. Jack kept checking the rearview mirror, making sure they weren't being followed. Lily sat quietly in the passenger seat, clutching her small backpack like a lifeline. When they finally arrived at the safe house, a plain building in a residential neighborhood, Tom was waiting outside. "Jack, good to see you," Tom said, shaking his friend's hand. Then he knelt down to Lily's level. "You must be Lily. I've heard a lot about you. You're very brave." Lily didn't respond, staying close to Jack's side. Inside the safe house, 2 FBI agents were waiting. Agent Peterson was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, and Agent Martinez was a younger man with a serious expression. They had files and laptops spread across the dining table. Agent Peterson spoke first. "Lily, my name is Kate and this is Miguel. We're here to help you. We know you've been through a lot and we need to ask you some difficult questions, but I want you to know that you're safe here. Nobody can hurt you." Lily looked up at Jack and he nodded encouragingly. She took a deep breath and began to tell her story. She told them everything. About Frank's abuse, about her mother's death, about the poker games and the conversations she had overheard, about the threats Frank had made. The agents listened carefully, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. Jack watched as they documented everything, photographing the bruises that were still visible on Lily's arms and back. It was difficult to watch Lily relive her trauma, but he stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand when it got too hard. After 2 hours, Agent Peterson sat back in her chair. "Lily, you've given us crucial information. What you've told us connects several pieces of our investigation that we've been trying to figure out for months. You're a very important witness. What happens now?" Jack asked. "Now we need to keep both of you safe while we execute our operation," Agent Martinez said. "Frank and his associates are dangerous people. If they find out Lily is talking to us, they'll try to silence her. We'd like to put you both in protective custody until we can make our arrests." "For how long?" Lily asked, her voice small. "A week, maybe 2. We're very close to having everything we need. Once we arrest Frank and the others, you'll be safe." Jack felt Lily tense beside him. The idea of being in protective custody, of being separated from the only safe place she knew, was clearly terrifying for her. But Jack also knew it was necessary. "Can we stay together?" Jack asked. "Lily and me?" The agents exchanged glances. "That's irregular," Agent Peterson said slowly. "Typically, minors in protective custody go to specialized facilities." "I'm not going anywhere without Jack," Lily said suddenly, her voice stronger than before. "He saved me. He protected me when nobody else would. If you make me leave him, I won't help you anymore." Agent Martinez looked like he was going to argue, but Agent Peterson held up her hand. "Let me make some calls. Maybe we can work something out." While Agent Peterson stepped outside to make phone calls, Tom pulled Jack aside. "You know what you're getting into here, right? If you stay with Lily through this, you're committing to more than just a few weeks. The court's going to ask questions about your relationship with her, about why you didn't report finding her immediately. They might see you as a problem instead of a hero." "I don't care," Jack said firmly. "That little girl has nobody else. Her mother is dead. Her stepfather is a monster and the system failed her completely. I'm not abandoning her now. Whatever consequences I face, I'll deal with them." Tom smiled and clapped his friend on the shoulder. "That's what I hoped you'd say. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." Agent Peterson came back inside and her expression was cautiously positive. "I spoke with my supervisor. Given the unusual circumstances and Lily's strong attachment to you, they're willing to keep you together during protective custody. But Jack, you need to understand something. After this is over, there will be a formal investigation into your actions. Keeping Lily hidden for weeks, even with good intentions, is a serious matter. Child Protective Services will be involved, and there will be questions about your fitness as a potential guardian." "I understand," Jack said. "I'll face whatever comes. Right now, Lily's safety is all that matters." Lily looked up at Jack with gratitude and love in her eyes. In that moment, Jack knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The little girl who had stolen his bread had also stolen his heart. and he would move heaven and earth to protect her and give her the life she deserved. Protective custody turned out to be a small apartment in a secured building 2 hours away from Jack's mountain home. For the next 10 days, Jack and Lily lived in a strange kind of limbo, waiting for news from the FBI while trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in their temporary home. Jack did his best to keep Lily occupied and distracted. They played board games, watched movies, and Jack continued teaching her things. How to cook different meals, how to read maps, even some basic math that she had missed during her weeks of running. Lily soaked it all up like a sponge, hungry for knowledge and normalcy, but at night the fear would return. Lily had nightmares about Frank finding her, about being dragged back to that house, about being locked in closets and hurt again. Jack would hear her crying and would go sit with her until she fell back asleep. Sometimes they would talk, and sometimes they would just sit in comfortable silence. Jack was discovering that sometimes presence mattered more than words. During those quiet nights, Lily began to open up more about her life before Frank. She told Jack about her real father, a construction worker who had died when scaffolding collapsed at a job site. She described how her mother had struggled to make ends meet, working 2 jobs just to keep their small apartment. She explained how Frank had seemed like an answer to their prayers at first. A steady job, a nice house, someone to help her mother with bills. Mama really thought he was good, Lily said one night. She didn't see the bad parts until it was too late. And then she was scared to leave because Frank said he would make sure we had nothing if she tried. He said he had friends who could make us disappear. Your mother was doing her best in an impossible situation, Jack said gently. She loved you very much. That's why she told you to run if anything happened to her. She was trying to protect you the only way she knew how. Do you think she would be mad at me for running away? For not being there when she died? Jack's heart broke at the guilt in Lily's voice. No, sweetheart. I think she would be proud of you. You survived. You fought. That's exactly what she wanted for you. On the 8th day of their stay, Agent Peterson came to visit with news. We're moving tomorrow, she said. We've set up the operation to take down Frank and his network. It's happening at dawn. Will it be dangerous? Jack asked. We'll have overwhelming force. Frank and Deputy Roy don't know we're coming. We'll execute search warrants simultaneously at multiple locations. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone involved should be in custody. Lily had been quiet throughout this conversation, but now she spoke up. What if something goes wrong? What if Frank gets away? Agent Peterson knelt down to Lily's level. I won't lie to you and say there's zero risk, but we've been planning this for months. We have evidence from multiple sources, not just your testimony. Frank has nowhere to run, and even if by some chance he did escape the initial arrest, we have resources he can't imagine. We will find him. That night, neither Jack nor Lily could sleep. They sat together on the couch, watching the hours tick by on the clock. Jack found himself thinking about everything that had led to this moment. If he hadn't seen Lily that night on his porch, if he had called the police immediately instead of investigating on his own, if he had made any number of different decisions, things might have turned out very differently. Are you scared? Lily asked, interrupting his thoughts. A little, Jack admitted. But I'm more hopeful than scared. Tomorrow, Frank can't hurt you anymore. Tomorrow, you're finally free. What happens after tomorrow? After Frank is arrested? It was the question Jack had been dreading. I don't know exactly. There will be court proceedings. You'll probably have to testify at some point, and then there's the matter of where you'll live. I want to live with you, Lily said firmly. You're my family now. I want that too, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. But it's not entirely up to us. The court will have to decide what's best for you. You're what's best for me, Lily insisted. You saved my life. You kept me safe when nobody else would. Doesn't that matter? It matters, Jack assured her. And I'm going to fight for us, Lily, I promise you that. But we have to be patient and trust the process. The next morning arrived with agonizing slowness. At 6 a.m., Agent Peterson called to say the operation was underway. Jack and Lily sat in the apartment waiting for updates. Every minute felt like an hour. Lily held Jack's hand so tightly that his fingers went numb, but he didn't complain. At 8:30, the phone rang again. Agent Peterson's voice was triumphant. We got them. Frank, Deputy Roy, and 6 other members of their network are all in custody. We found extensive evidence at Frank's house. Financial records, drugs, and yes, proof of illegal gambling operations. Frank is facing multiple charges, and with Lily's testimony, we have a solid case. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. He looked at Lily and smiled. It's over. Frank can't hurt you anymore. Lily started crying, but this time they were tears of relief and joy. She threw her arms around Jack, holding him tightly. We did it. We really did it. But their celebration was short-lived. Later that afternoon, a woman from Child Protective Services arrived at the apartment. Her name was Carol, and she was professional but kind. Lily, I'm here to talk about what happens next, Carol explained. Now that Frank is in custody, we need to make arrangements for your care. I want to stay with Jack, Lily said immediately. Carol gave her a sympathetic smile. I understand that. But there are procedures we have to follow. Jack isn't a licensed foster parent, and there are questions about the circumstances of how you came to be in his care. We need to do a thorough investigation before any permanent arrangements can be made. What does that mean? Jack asked, feeling dread creep into his stomach. It means that for now, Lily will need to stay in a temporary foster home while we complete our assessment. We'll evaluate Jack's home, conduct background checks, and interview both of you separately. This process usually takes several months. No, Lily cried out. You can't take me away from Jack. He's the only person who's ever really protected me. I'm not trying to punish you or Jack, Carol said gently, but I have to follow the law. The good news is that Jack can apply to become your foster parent and eventually adopt you if everything checks out. But we can't skip these important steps. Jack felt like he had been punched in the gut. After everything they had been through, after all they had survived together, the system was going to separate them anyway. He looked at Lily's terrified face and made a decision. How long will the investigation take? He asked Carol. Typically 3 to 6 months for foster parent approval. Adoption proceedings can take longer. And during that time, can I visit Lily? Can we maintain contact? Yes, supervised visitation can be arranged. And if your home study goes well, we might be able to arrange unsupervised visits. Jack turned to Lily and took her hands in his. Listen to me. I know this is scary, and I know it feels like we're being punished when we didn't do anything wrong. But we have to work with Carol in the system. It's the only way I can become your legal guardian. Can you be brave for just a little while longer? Lily was crying hard now, but she nodded. You promise you won't forget about me? You promise you'll come visit? I promise. Every single week I'll be there, and I'm going to do everything they ask me to do so that we can be a real family. You're not getting rid of me, Lily. Not now. Not ever. Carol gave them some time to say goodbye. Jack held Lily while she cried, memorizing the feel of her small frame, the sound of her voice, the trust in her eyes. He made silent promises to himself that he would pass every inspection, answer every question, and jump through every hoop they put in front of him. When it was time for Lily to go, she looked back at Jack one more time. I love you, she said quietly. It was the first time either of them had said those words out loud. Jack felt his heart swell with emotion. I love you too, kiddo. More than you know. I'll see you soon. As Carol led Lily out of the apartment, Jack stood at the window and watched them drive away. He felt empty and alone, just like he had 5 years ago when he lost his family. But this time was different. This time he had hope. This time he had something worth fighting for. The little girl who had stolen his bread had given him so much more in return. She had given him purpose, love, and a reason to believe in the future again. And now he would fight the biggest battle of his life. Not against criminals or corrupt cops, but against paperwork, bureaucracy, and a system designed to protect children, but sometimes failing to see what they truly needed. Jack was going to bring Lily home. No matter how long it took, no matter what he had to do, he was going to make her his daughter in every legal sense, because that's what she already was in his heart. The first month without Lily was the hardest time Jack had experienced since losing his family. The cabin felt empty and lifeless without her laughter, without the sound of her footsteps, without her constant questions and observations about everything around them. He found himself cooking meals for 2 out of habit, only to remember she wasn't there to share them. But Jack didn't waste time feeling sorry for himself. The day after Lily left, he contacted a family lawyer named Michelle, who specialized in adoption cases. She was straightforward about the challenges ahead. Your situation is complicated, Michelle explained during their first meeting. You harbored a runaway child for weeks without reporting it to authorities. Even though your intentions were noble and you were protecting her from real danger, The court will scrutinize this heavily. What are my chances? Jack asked. That depends entirely on you. You need to be completely transparent, cooperative, and patient. The home study will be thorough. They'll look at your finances, your mental health history, your background, everything. You'll need character references, parenting classes, and psychological evaluations. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? I'll do whatever it takes, Jack said without hesitation, and he meant it. Over the next weeks, Jack threw himself into the process with military precision. He attended parenting classes twice a week, learning about child development, trauma-informed care, and positive discipline strategies. He met with a therapist to address his own grief and to demonstrate his emotional stability. He prepared his home, child-proofing areas that needed it and creating a proper bedroom for Lily with bright colors and everything a little girl might need. The home study caseworker, a woman named Helen, visited multiple times. She inspected every corner of the cabin, asked hundreds of questions, and took copious notes. Jack answered everything honestly, even when the truth made him look bad. Why didn't you contact authorities immediately when you found Lily? Helen asked during one visit. Because she begged me not to, Jack answered. She told me her stepfather had connections with local law enforcement, and I could see the terror in her eyes. I made a judgment call to investigate first before potentially putting her back in danger. Was it the right legal decision? No. Was it the right moral decision? I believe it was. Helen appreciated his honesty. And what makes you think you're qualified to be a parent? You've been living alone for 5 years. You have no experience raising children beyond your own daughter who passed away. You're right, I don't have recent experience, Jack admitted. But I know what Lily needs because I've been there with her. She needs consistency, safety, and someone who believes in her. She needs a parent who will fight for her, not someone who sees her as just another case file. I can give her that. I already am giving her that. Throughout this process, Jack visited Lily every week at her temporary foster home. The foster parents, an older couple named Robert and Diana, were kind people who treated Lily well. But Jack could see that Lily was just going through the motions there. She was polite and well-behaved, but the spark that had started to come back during their time together had dimmed again. During their visits, which were supervised for the first month, Jack and Lily would go to the park or get ice cream. They would talk about their weeks, and Jack would update her on the progress of his application. Lily would always ask the same question, "When can I come home?" And Jack would always give the same answer, "Soon, I hope. We just have to be patient." After the first month, the supervisor deemed their visits appropriate for unsupervised time. This was a huge step forward. Jack started bringing Lily back to the cabin for day visits. The joy on her face when she walked through that familiar door made all the bureaucratic hassles worthwhile. "I miss this place so much," Lily said, running her hands over the furniture. The walls, everything that felt like home to her. "Did you keep my room the way it was?" "Come see for yourself," Jack said, leading her upstairs. Lily gasped when she saw her room. Jack had painted it a soft yellow color that reminded him of sunshine. He had bought new curtains with little stars on them, a comfortable bed with a thick quilt, and shelves filled with books appropriate for her age. On the desk was art supplies, and on the walls were photos, some of Lily with her mother and new ones of Lily with Jack from their time together. "It's beautiful," Lily whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "You did all this for me?" "Of course I did. This is your home, Lily. It's always been your home." These weekend visits became the highlight of both their lives. Jack taught Lily more skills: how to fish in the nearby stream, how to identify animal tracks, how to bake different kinds of bread. Lily helped Jack with chores, and they fell back into their comfortable routine. It felt natural, like this was how things were always meant to be. Meanwhile, the court proceedings against Frank were moving forward. Lily had to give testimony via video conference, which was difficult but necessary. She told the judge everything, about the abuse, the threats, the illegal activities she had witnessed. Jack sat with her during the testimony, holding her hand, lending her his strength. Frank's lawyer tried to paint Jack as the real villain, suggesting that he had manipulated Lily or even kidnapped her. But the evidence didn't support that narrative. Photos of Lily's injuries, the testimony of FBI agents, and even Tom's investigation all pointed to the same truth. Jack had saved Lily from a dangerous situation. In the end, Frank was sentenced to 15 years in prison for child abuse, assault, participation in illegal gambling operations, and various other charges. Deputy Roy and several others in the network also received significant sentences. It was justice, but it didn't undo the trauma Lily had experienced. 4 months into the process, Michelle called Jack with good news. Helen submitted her report. It's favorable. She's recommending you for foster parent approval. Jack felt his heart leap. That's good, right? That's very good. It means we're one step closer. The next stage is the court hearing, where a judge will review all the evidence and make a decision about placing Lily in your foster care. If that goes well, you can begin the adoption process. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Jack prepared meticulously, gathering every document, every reference letter, every piece of evidence that showed he could provide a good home for Lily. Carol from Child Protective Services would testify, as would Helen, the home study caseworker. Michelle would present their case, and Jack would have to answer questions from the judge. The night before the hearing, Jack couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong, all the reasons the judge might deny his petition. He thought about Lily growing up in the foster system, bounced from home to home, never really belonging anywhere. The thought made him physically ill, but he also thought about the alternative, Lily coming home for good, growing up in the mountain cabin, learning and laughing and healing from her trauma. He thought about teaching her to drive when she was old enough, helping her with homework, walking her down the aisle someday if she chose to get married. He thought about being there for all of life's big and small moments, being the father she deserved. On the morning of the hearing, Jack put on his best suit, the same one he had worn to his wife and daughter's funeral 5 years ago. It felt appropriate somehow, like he was honoring their memory by opening his heart to love again, by choosing to be a father again despite the risk of loss. At the courthouse, Lily was waiting with Carol and her foster parents. When she saw Jack, she ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Are you nervous?" she whispered. "Terrified," Jack admitted. "But I'm also hopeful. Today could change everything for us." "No matter what happens," Lily said, looking up at him with those wise old eyes that had seen too much. "You're my dad. That's not going to change." Jack had to blink back tears. "You're my daughter, and I'm going to do everything I can to make it official." As they walked into the courtroom together, Jack felt Lily's small hand slip into his. In that moment, he knew that whatever the judge decided, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The mountain man and the little girl who stole his bread had already overcome so much. They had survived Frank, corruption, separation, and bureaucracy. Surely they could survive one more test. Surely love and determination would be enough to convince a judge that sometimes family isn't about blood or conventional circumstances. Sometimes family is about finding each other in the darkness and choosing to hold on, no matter what the world throws at you. The judge entered the courtroom, and everyone stood. This was it. The moment that would determine whether Jack and Lily's story would have the happy ending they both desperately wanted. Jack squeezed Lily's hand one more time before she had to sit with Carol, and he took his place at the table beside Michelle. The hearing was about to begin. Judge Anderson was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had a reputation for being fair but thorough, never making decisions lightly when a child's future was at stake. As she reviewed the thick file in front of her, the courtroom remained silent except for the sound of pages turning. Finally, she looked up and addressed the room. "This is an unusual case. We have a decorated military veteran who harbored a runaway child for several weeks without contacting authorities. We also have that same man who potentially saved that child's life and helped bring down a criminal organization. I've reviewed all the materials, but I want to hear directly from the people involved." Michelle stood up. "Your Honor, if I may present our case?" "Proceed." For the next hour, Michelle laid out everything. She presented Jack's military record, his spotless background check, the glowing references from people who had known him for years. She showed photos of the cabin and Lily's room, documented the parenting classes Jack had completed, and presented the psychological evaluation that showed Jack was mentally sound and capable of providing stable care. Then it was Carol's turn to testify. "Your Honor, I've been a social worker for 20 years and I've seen many cases. Initially, I was concerned about Mr. Thompson's decision to hide Lily from authorities. However, after investigating thoroughly, I believe his actions, while not legally correct, were motivated entirely by a desire to protect a child in genuine danger. His subsequent cooperation has been exemplary. He's completed every requirement we've asked of him and more. Helen, the home study caseworker, testified next. I've conducted hundreds of home studies in my career. Mr. Thompson's preparation and commitment have been outstanding. His home is safe, appropriate for a child, and filled with evidence of his care for Lily. More importantly, the bond between them is genuine. This isn't a man looking to save face or fulfill some personal need. This is a father who loves his daughter. The judge then called Agent Peterson to testify about the investigation into Frank. She explained how Lily's information had been crucial to their case, how Frank had been part of a larger criminal network, and how the corruption in local law enforcement had made it impossible for traditional channels to protect Lily. Would you say Mr. Thompson's decision to investigate before contacting authorities was reasonable given the circumstances? The judge asked. In my professional opinion, yes, Agent Peterson replied. If he had gone to the local police, there's a strong possibility Lily would have been returned to Frank. Mr. Thompson's military intelligence background served him well in this situation. He knew how to gather evidence and when to contact federal authorities who weren't compromised. Finally, the judge turned to Jack. Mr. Thompson, please approach the stand. Jack stood and walked forward, his heart pounding. He was sworn in and took his seat, very aware of Lily's eyes watching him from across the courtroom. Mr. Thompson, I want you to be completely honest with me, Judge Anderson said. Did you consider the legal implications of keeping Lily hidden? Yes, Your Honor, I did, Jack answered, and I struggled with that decision every day. But when I weighed the legal risk to myself against the physical danger to Lily, there was no contest. I would make the same choice again. Even knowing you could have faced criminal charges, even knowing that. Lily's safety was more important than my freedom. The judge studied him for a moment. Tell me about your relationship with Lily. When did it become clear to you that you wanted to be her permanent guardian? Jack took a deep breath. Your Honor, I lost my wife and daughter 5 years ago in a car accident. It destroyed me. I retreated to that mountain cabin because I couldn't face a world without them. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone, and that was fine with me. Then this little girl appeared on my porch, stealing bread to survive, and something in me woke up. At first, I just wanted to help her. But as I got to know her, as I saw her strength and her heart despite everything she'd been through, I realized that she was giving me something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to live. A reason to care. A reason to be part of the world again. She needs a father, and I need to be her father. We healed each other. There were tears in the judge's eyes, though her expression remained professional. And if I grant you foster care with the intention of eventual adoption, what kind of life can you provide for Lily? An honest one, Jack said simply. I can't promise wealth or luxury. I live simply on my military pension and what I make from selling produce and crafts. But I can promise her safety, stability, and unconditional love. I can promise her a home where she's valued, where her voice matters, where she never has to be afraid again. I can promise her a father who will show up for every school event, every milestone, every moment of her life. I can promise her that she'll never wonder if she's wanted, because she is. More than anything in this world. The judge was quiet for a moment, then said, Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You may step down. Now I'd like to speak with Lily privately in my chambers. Jack returned to his seat, feeling drained. Michelle patted his arm reassuringly. You did great. Lily looked nervous as she followed the judge and Carol into the private chambers. Jack waited, each minute feeling like an hour. What was the judge asking her? What was Lily saying? He tried to read the expressions of people around him, but everyone remained professional and neutral. After 20 minutes, they emerged. Lily's eyes immediately found Jack's, but he couldn't read her expression. Was it good news or bad? The judge returned to her bench and picked up her gavel. This court has reviewed all evidence and testimony regarding the petition of Jack Thompson to become the foster parent of Lily Parker, with the intention of eventual adoption. This case presents unique circumstances that required careful consideration. Jack held his breath. On one hand, Mr. Thompson violated protocol by not immediately reporting a found runaway child. This is not something this court takes lightly. On the other hand, the evidence clearly shows that his actions protected a child from imminent danger in a situation where the normal protective systems had failed due to corruption. The judge paused, and Jack felt like his heart might explode. After speaking with Lily, it's clear that she has formed a strong, healthy attachment to Mr. Thompson. She articulated clearly why she wants to live with him, and her reasoning shows maturity and understanding of what family means. More importantly, I see no evidence of manipulation or coercion. This is a child who has found safety and love after experiencing trauma, and she deserves to keep that. Judge Anderson looked directly at Jack. Mr. Thompson, I'm granting you foster care custody of Lily Parker, effective immediately. You will be subject to regular home visits and reviews for the next 6 months. If all goes well during that period, we will proceed with adoption proceedings. Do you understand the responsibility you're taking on? Yes, Your Honor, Jack said, his voice breaking with emotion. I understand completely, and I'm ready. Good. Then this hearing is concluded. Lily, you can go home with your father today. The gavel came down, and for a moment Jack couldn't move. Had he heard that correctly? Had the judge really said Lily could come home today? He looked at Michelle, who was smiling and nodding. Then he looked at Lily, who had already jumped up from her seat and was running toward him. She crashed into his arms with such force that he almost fell backward. We did it! We really did it! She cried, tears streaming down her face. Jack held her tight, not caring that he was crying too, not caring that everyone in the courtroom could see them. You're coming home, kiddo, you're really coming home. Carol approached them with paperwork. I'll need you both to sign some forms, and we'll schedule the first home visit for next week. But yes, Lily can leave with you today. The next hour was a blur of signatures, instructions, and well wishes from people who had been part of their journey. Robert and Diana, Lily's temporary foster parents, brought her belongings and hugged them both goodbye. Tom showed up to congratulate them. Even Agent Peterson stopped by to shake Jack's hand. You're a good man, she said. That little girl is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Jack replied, watching Lily excitedly tell Tom about her room at the cabin. Finally, they were walking out of the courthouse together, Jack's hand protectively on Lily's shoulder. The sun was shining, and the air felt fresher than it had in months. As they reached Jack's truck, Lily turned to him. Can we go home now? To our real home? Yes, Jack said, opening the truck door for her. We're going home. The drive up the mountain felt different this time. Before, when Jack had made this journey alone, it had been about escape and isolation. Now, with Lily chattering excitedly beside him about all the things she wanted to do when they got home, it was about belonging and purpose. The same winding roads, the same tall trees, but everything had changed. When the cabin came into view, Lily pressed her face against the window. I can't believe I get to stay forever now. Forever, Jack confirmed, pulling into the driveway. This is your home for as long as you want it. They spent the rest of that day settling in. Lily unpacked her belongings, carefully arranging her mother's photos on her dresser alongside the new ones of her and Jack. She organized her art supplies and her books,